Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP28 in Dubai. Ambitious, just together.
Ja, guten Tag, ganz herzlich willkommen zu unserer Pressekonferenz, Halbzeitbilanz der COP28 mit Staatssekretär
Stock halftime of the COP. Jennifer Morgan, Jochen Flassbach, and Stefan Wenzel are with us today, state secretaries.
And there will be translation for everyone. All right, mit diesen Worten gebe ich gleich ab direkt an unsere Staatssekretärin.
So I will give the floor to our state.
Guten Tag, ja, kann ich jetzt sagen.
Hello. Yes. COP28 started with a bombshell announcement, and I never experienced such a kickoff of the COP. It was good for international solidarity and good for the climate, and as the last days have shown, it was also good for the dynamics at COP. Germany played a fundamental role with its coordinated approach between UAE and Germany, who both announced $100 million, and this matching for the fund created a positive dynamic right at the outset. Many have immediately announced their own contributions. For example, France and Italy raised their contributions to reach the German level, and I'm sure that State Secretary Mr. Flassbart will comment on this further later on, but it was truly a great kickoff. Climate financing goes in the right direction, more or less, in large parts, but it is clear that we also need more private financing, and at the margins of the World Climate Action Summit, we also signed a declaration for a new financial framework, global financial framework, which includes an appeal for more public, but also more private climate financing and a reform of the financial institutions. This first week has shown us that with early progress in climate financing, we've been able to truly make these small, vulnerable states feel relieved. And the agenda was also adopted early on. That meant we could start negotiations early, and that means that this week we can really focus on the essential part of the agreement, the global stocktake, and the issue of global energy transition. Chancellor Scholz raised our profile here in Dubai once again. He said, we want to speed up climate protection worldwide and make the energy transition a truly global success story. We need to be determined now and phase out fossil fuels, firstly coal. And Chancellor Scholz also was able to successfully launch the Climate Club together with Chile. I would also like to highlight that we feel broad support for our renewable energies and energy efficiency goals. All in all, 123 states have supported the energy pledge of the EU, the UAE, and ARENA. That is almost two-thirds of the states party to the agreement, and that means that a big share of those involved want to make progress. It's a truly encouraging symbol for the future. And enshrining the renewables goals in the COP decision has become tangible, I believe, this week. But we will continue to make the case for an ambitious overall package. Firstly, anchoring the global renewable energy goals and energy efficiency goals for 2030, clear language where the energy transition should be headed, a socially fair phase out of fossil fuels, deforestation stop, national adaptation measures in line with development objectives, and especially relevant is the protection of ecosystems, water security, food security, health, progress in doubling adaptation financing, and an appeal that the next round of climate negotiations needs to include all sectors of industry. It is important that Germany made progress not only at home, but also with our partners. And we will be able to take your questions to go into more detail later on. We are right in the middle of the negotiations. All important elements the EU is advancing are options in the text still, including the global stock take. Negotiations, as is often the case, are a mixed picture right now. We see big differences between individual states in some areas, but our team truly feels that there is a will to make progress with so many parties to the agreement, and I can confirm this from my own meetings. On a technical level, we will probably negotiate all night to level out differences. The goal for the coming week is to use the political level to deal with the tricky issues. We're not yet all on a common denominator yet, but we're talking about the essential issues. A good result is possible, but it won't be easy to bring it about. It's important now to build bridges. Jochen Plasbart has the floor. Thank you. Hello to everyone. This morning we already had an event together, and somebody sent me a picture and wrote me, "Why are you? Why have you? Do you have such a gloomy look on your faces?" But I think we have all reason to be optimistic. Somebody spoke about a midterm blues, and I can't see that. I don't see that. I've been at many COPs, as so many of us have, and I think that we have a good basis after this first week of negotiations. And in addition, under the leadership of the Foreign Office in Cabinet, at 12 o'clock, we expect the official announcement. 3 o'clock here, local time, the climate action strategy, and that shows how well Germany is prepared. At all COPs, we as the German government have really stood together, but I never felt such a team spirit and joint determination and conviction. It's nothing that we have to wrestle about and where we need to find a common denominator. We are really together in this, and that makes us strong. For the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, loss and damages was the crucial issue. We wanted to make this a success as the German government, as part of the EU, as part of those who really wish to see a constructive result. And there was a negotiation, a transitional committee to set this up. Heike Henn was participating in this committee together with Ireland, and this was the group that made decisive preparations for this result that we've seen here. The 4 meetings of the committee had not yet produced the desired result, so UAE decided to invite the committee to a 5th meeting in November, and I think that was a decisive one, and I really want to stress this again. This truly showed leadership from the presidency, and that was the point in time when I traveled to Abu Dhabi myself, met with Sultan Al Jaber, and the idea was that if the committee were to reach an agreement in the 5th meeting, this needs to be implemented. We need to make consensus here. And not everybody was cheering the results of the 5th meeting, so it was important to make this case, and that was the birth moment of the idea that the UAE and Germany would provide $200 billion for the fund, and it is important to create momentum in the first place, right at the start of the conference, of course. The idea to do that right at the start of the conference was the wise idea of the team of the presidency, and it was supported by people like Jennifer Morgan and others. who have so much experience in the dynamics of such negotiations. And we really wanted to show that we're not only taking this to the finish line, but we also wanted to send out a message to the vulnerable countries. There is really money available. It's not only about figures. We can start now. And it was important for us as well that together with the UAE, we will make a visible statement by having a non-traditional donor with the UAE here, so that the old world of the industrialized nations of 1992 and the then developing countries are no longer in the same position. The Santiago network was also crucial. It's doing the technical advice. It was started in Glasgow and even earlier on. In Glasgow, it was a big issue, and here again, Germany provided important input. And in addition to the policy mechanism that has been discussed in Warsaw, we also have a technical assistance mechanism here and the finances as well. So loss and damage will be the big legacy of this COP. We can already say that now. And now we need to make sure that we continue. Part of this is financing. For us, as the federal government of Germany, was important that we live up to our promises. That's what we did with more than 6 billion euros already in 2022. And we also decided that we would host a replenishing conference for the climate fund in Bonn, and we did that. And I know that I read in the news that this had been a flop because we didn't reach the 10 billion that had been reached in the past. But I'm still optimistic. Right now we are at 12.5 billion US dollars, the highest pledges ever made for this climate fund. A last word on adaptation. There is a cascade, and it's all happening at the same time. The less we do for reducing CO2 emissions, and that's why we are really making the case for reducing CO2 emissions. The less we do on reduction, the more we need to do on adaptation, and the less we do on adaptation, the more we need to do on loss and damage. But it becomes ever more expensive if we don't act right now. So it's important that we also move on with adaptation. It's more complicated, more complex than mitigation. If you look at mitigation and you have you erect 3 wind power plants, you won't make a mistake. And Stefan Wenzel knows that because he also knows about the federal states level. When you really want to make progress and phase out the fossil fuels and invest in renewables, you need to be bold. You need to have a plan. And if you don't have a plan in the beginning, you'll fail. You can't just take tiny steps, build a small project here and there, get some acres of land ready for climate change. You need to have a plan. And this is why it is more difficult to convey this message. But we need progress. And that's the goal on adaptation. I think success is in reach. We need a big narrative, a big headline. And that means that resilience of the entire population needs to be strengthened in a way that they can cope with climate change. That is the task ahead. And then we need to look at what does it mean for food security? What does it mean for health systems? We need also in political economics, we need to move away from the technical field and really see what is politically, what can we communicate politically. And I also hear from negotiation rooms that there is a fallback into old bifurcation system, old industrialized nations and developing countries as they'd been in 1992. And I can tell you here that this world will never come back. That's also a result of the announcement on the loss and damage fund. Some don't like it because that means they will have to contribute money, but we won't fall back into this old world.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and Jochen. I would like to talk about the topics that the Federal Ministry for Economy and Climate Action is dedicated to at this COP. We are dealing with a tremendous need for investment if we want to transform our economy, if we want to switch our energy supply to renewable energies, and if we want to take the adaptation measures Johann Flassbart talked about, and hopefully we will not need too much for loss and damages, but we see that the damage is tremendous in some countries. This is why it is important to us to also look at private capital in order to make private investment in infrastructure, electricity grids, renewable energies, modern technologies to make this possible and generate a private capital in order to also create the necessary framework conditions. My ministry is in negotiations, dealing with negotiating Articles 2 and 6 and 10 under the auspices of the Foreign Office, of course. We are dealing with the implementation of the Paris Agreement, for instance, when it comes to forging alliances. Best example is Climate Club, consisting of 36 countries who want to decarbonize their industry, want to focus on the most difficult parts that is needed in the end: chemical industry, shipping industry, aviation, heavy industries, the major part of industry. Then we have a whole range of bilateral and multilateral formats with our partner countries. For instance, together with Ukraine, we are working towards establishing resilient, decentralized grids and networks, which will make sure that energy supply is guaranteed and secured, even if it's damaged. It's an important aspect right now, because last winter there were targeted attacks on infrastructure aimed at destroying the electricity grid in Ukraine. We need to prevent that. We called upon the world to donate material. Of course, you can buy material, but we are grateful that many companies lent their support from their own stocks. And we are also working on the topic of financing by way of cooperation with multilateral investment and development banks, by using our instruments that we have at hand, by also working together with the KfW and adapting the guidelines. We want to make sure that countries which have higher rates of inflation and higher rates of borrowing, we want to create opportunities that these countries have the opportunity to invest. So financing is an important aspect. It's also enshrined in the Paris Agreement under Article 2(1)(c), where it says that the budgets, public budgets, but also private companies' budgets, have to be brought in line with the 1.5 degree objective. It's an important matter also when you look at companies in the oil sectors. And of course, this also holds true for those companies. They have to be aligned and brought in line and realize how markets are developing. This year and last year, 83% of all investments, 83% of investments in production of electricity were done into renewable energies. So these developments are market-driven. And estimates for this year say that it is up to 500 gigawatt that can be added in terms of new capacity. And overall, we're talking about how we can triple the share of renewable energies to 11.7 terawatt. I believe 123 countries committed and pledged this and want to see this in a final declaration. Also, we're seeing a doubling of energy efficiency in correspondence to the GDP is an important objective that helps us reach our goals. And we are working across ministries together towards enshrining these objectives in a declaration. I am also happy to note that the United Arab Emirates are going to implement a carbon tax system, or planning a carbon tax system, and we've seen a whole range of meetings dedicated to global methane pledge. These are the low-hanging fruits. You can prevent that this highly dangerous a greenhouse gas places a burden on our atmosphere, and we've made great progress here, and I hope that we succeed in reaching our objectives and see a reduction, a substantial reduction by 2030. Thank you very much. We're opening the floor for questions now, and the first question is over there, please. Mr. Wenzel, one question to you and one question directed at you, Mr. Flasper. When talking to African representatives, you hear that many are thinking at reopening their gas fields, hoping to supply gas to Europe. Is this something that you could recommend to them? Mr. Flasper, we're in budget deliberations in Germany. How much do they affect financing, and what's at stake here? Well, I believe the exploration of new gas and oil fields should not be done. For one, it's bad for our climate, and it's also not good for the companies. I think we're going to see a reduction of consumption. We have 107 states that have reached or gone beyond their peak when it comes to the use of fossil energies. We have efficient technologies, for instance, in the field of mobility, electric vehicles, in the field of heating and cooling of buildings. We're going to see a reduction of gas and oil consumption, and if you explore this, you're going to see lost assets, and I think you're going to see this more visibly in the future. No, we are not seeing any restrictions. We have not seen a full suspension of the budget. A large share has been pre-negotiated, so we were able to use these funds, and for the rest, we have an agreement with the Minister of Finance that enables us to make our promises and pledges here at COP. We've also were able to make promises and pledges during the visit of President Lula in Berlin, so we don't have any limitations, but as you rightly said, we are in budget deliberations right now in the German parliament. I'm optimistic that we are going to behave responsibly. We're not at the very forefront of financing parties. We're not bad, but we play our part, and we stick to our promises, and that raised our profile in terms of climate action, but also geopolitically, and I'm confident that everyone will understand that. Allow me to add, speaking of geopolitics, what I'm seeing here, what's different from last year, we're seeing that the geopolitics of the energy sector is different. We're seeing a turnaround. Countries which have not seen any opportunities, or countries that did not think that renewable energies would actually help them, they are fully on board and are supporting the renewable energies goal, whether it's in Africa, Latin America, or Asia. Yesterday, we had a ministerial launch of accelerated renewables in Africa. Chancellor Scholz and President Rutte launched this and also founded a Green Guarantees group. So we're looking at how can we create a platform that actually makes sure that the various platforms can cooperate to bring down the costs for renewable energies in Africa and other developing nations. I'd like to ask two questions. Mr. Flassbart, you said you are a good team. Who is here on behalf of the FDP? And I would like to ask a question pertaining to nuclear energy. What role does nuclear energy play, and is it going to be part of the final declaration? I don't understand your question pertaining to the FDP, the Liberals. We are here representing the federal government. We speak on behalf of the federal government and also the ministries which are not represented here. We do not talk on behalf of our own individual ministries, but we are coordinating ourselves and we speak on behalf of the federal government. 123 states committed to the triple renewable and double efficiency objective, and we're seeing an initiative consisting of 22 nations looking at the topic of nuclear energy. It's due to the fact that they have tremendous problems with their supply chains. A major share of fuel cells results from Russian sources, and this holds true for the new mini reactors. Russia provides the material for those, and I have a feeling that with the already existing nuclear power plants, you have problems to cover the needs. So I don't see that there is going to be an increase, because this will also lead to an increase of problems. This seems to be the background, the reason for this initiative. Even if you were to invest a lot of money, I think it's too late when it comes to climate action and climate protection. I'd like to add, we're talking in 2030. We need to reduce our emissions by 2030 by 43%. Nuclear energy is too expensive. It's slow. It's too slow. It's risky. And this is why we need to focus on embarking on the path towards using renewables. There's more questions on the other side. I'm going to move over there. Yes, thank you very much. My question is directed all three of you. There was criticism that the delegation is too large. Maybe you could talk about how much sleep you get halfway through, and why you need so many people in your delegation. Yes, I can understand these questions. It's very difficult to understand what's happening and going on during COP. Number one, there's three different bodies. There is COP, there's the Kyoto Protocol that is negotiated, and the Paris Agreement. And all of these three bodies contain highly complicated negotiations, carbon markets, nuclear, forest deforest, and this is why every government, because we want to shape things, this is why we need the expertise and know-how and our teams. And second, there's ministerial meetings, a whole range of ministerial meetings, the meeting of health ministers, all the various ministers, and the ministers for the environment. All those ministers have traveled here, and of course they bring along their teams in order to address these topics, also matters pertaining to development. And of course you need people for that. And then, of course, then you have people dedicated to finding solutions, academics, scientists, and they use the COP as an opportunity to meet. Everyone gathers here, and I think it is a strong signal that the topic of climate is an integrated topic. It has an influence on many areas, whether it's security, agriculture, development, all of these topics. So this is why it is such a big meeting. For Germany, we have a team that is able to engage in negotiations, to host this pavilion, and we have a very powerful delegation. Thank you.
Paragraph 35 is being fully opposed by China, Saudi Arabia, and there is no third version of the text. what is your comment on this situation today? Thank you.
Ich antworte auf Englisch, oder soll ich auf Deutsch? Also, I'll answer you in English. In English. I think the situation is that we are now discussing the real issues that are here, as I said in my opening. Those issues are the ones that where parties are further apart and need the time to get together on coming to a conclusion. And so I would say it's also an indication of that. It's also an indication we are in the negotiations. But it's, of course, absolutely necessary that every party come together, moves away from these, from their red lines into solutions. That today is the end of, we'll have the stock-taking plenary tonight. And then I think we need to roll up our sleeves and get this done, because we are here in the middle of a COP where the climate crisis is raging around the world. And so those countries, including ours, that have large responsibilities and large emissions, need to find solutions to phase out fossil fuels and to build up the new renewable energy economy together.
Also ich will noch mal 2 Sätze dazu ergänzen. Für mich ist das
Let me add 2 sentences. I don't think it comes as a surprise. In Glasgow, for the first time, we seriously discussed coal phase-out. Now we're talking about fossil phase-out. And for many countries, that induces huge changes and the end of a fossil age. And there are many different interests involved. So it doesn't come as a surprise that there are some strong statements when you truly see that this is a real possibility. As long as it is a discussion in small circles, it wasn't really so fundamental, it wasn't a reality. But now this is the last flaring up of the fossil world. We have another question here. Thank you, Jakob Meyer, ARD. I would like to add another question to Ms. Morgan on the state of negotiations and more specifically phasing out fossil fuels. Do you see a possibility for an alliance of the most vulnerable states together with countries such as Germany to move forward this topic, this phase out, and make it binding? That would help the COP president, Al-Jaber, to say there is this pressure and I need to react, because I would interpret his actions or statements as his wish to reach a strong outcome. I think Germany and the EU are working at full speed with the most vulnerable countries. They are our natural allies. We've seen it for loss and damage, and there is already such a coalition and alliance that sees the reality of this climate crisis, with which we are working closely and will continue to do so to create the clearest message possible for the phase-out by the end of the conference. And this is truly about the existence of countries. Tuvalu is just one example. So we listen very carefully what these countries have to say, what African or South American countries have to say. Countries such as Colombia are really making this case, even though they get a lot of income from the coal sector, because they see that the climate crisis is a truly economic crisis too for their own population. So it is a struggle. But I believe that we, as Europe, as Europeans and as Germans, we can be a bridge builder thanks to all the partnerships our government has. And I think we have a strong position now that we enter the second week of negotiations. Ricarda Richter from Zeit. I'd be interested to hear about the role of natural gas at this conference, and whether there is a difference is made between different fossil energy carriers when we talk about fossil phase-out, and whether you feel the influence of a lobby of fossil fuels here. Well, the EU talks about phasing out all fossil fuels with a special focus on not adding any new coal coal-fired power plants, because we see how many coal-fired power plants are added in Asia and China, and we're very concerned about this development. Regarding the question about lobbyists, 3 remarks from my side. Firstly, I think it's good that we have this transparency. It is very important to know who is here. Secondly, it makes it even clearer that the COP presidency and others listen to the young people, to the indigenous populations, and all the representatives here. And thirdly, for me, it is a sign that really close to reaching this goal. As Jochen Flasper has said, we are in the midst of a debate that has been going on for 30 years, or had been prepared over 30 years. It should have happened earlier. And that's phasing out fossil fuels. And this is the place to be to get it done. Yeah, in the discussions we have discussed, for example, hydrogen technologies. How can we create the market ramp up for hydrogen? We have signed an MOU with 40 countries where we speak about international regulation standards, recognition of certifying authorities, and so forth, to be able to trade hydrogen on a global scale between importing and exporting countries. These are the topics that are interesting and important. And with my contacts to industry, I could feel again and again that the industry is ready for 1.5 with all its products and technologies. ThyssenKrupp and many other German companies, Lucera, a branch of ThyssenKrupp, is one of the biggest electrolyzers producers. Siemens Energy is present, not only with offshore and onshore wind energy, but also with grid expansion services internationally, providing its services over the globe. Siemens, MAN Energy Solutions, originally a producer of shipping engines, is now providing hydrogen technologies and ammonium technologies. That a project, an aspect that could replace entire coal-fired power plants. And I think that this is really a new message, creating some pressure, saying that we need regulation and there's a reliable framework, a lasting long-term framework. We want to invest and we have the technologies at our hands. Thank you. I have a question on the adaptation goal and the state of play. The idea is to create a symbolic goal for adaptation, similar to the 1.5 goal, 5-degree goal. And what are the most of the sticky points when it comes to adaptation? Can you comment? Yes, I briefly addressed this. It is more complicated. There is not the 1.5-degree goal that you can name here. But the goal that we want to advance here, or that we imagine, is that resilience should play a crucial role, the resilience of all people. That is an ambitious goal, but 1.5 degrees is another ambitious goal. And then you need to spell it out and operationalize it. Access to healthy food for everyone, access to health care. This is nothing new. When we look at what we do in politics, that is truly what the SDGs are about. And now we have climate change and the adaptation that's necessary, and we want to formulate the right goals. This is inaudible, sorry. I have 2 questions to Mr. Wenzel. You spoke about 125 million euros that Germany provides for a hydrogen fund. Can you specify where this money comes from, what's being done with it? And you, at a different point in time, you said tripling renewable energies should be something that should be a binding result of the COP. Should this be binding for each country, for certain regions? How do you spell it out? Yeah, I think Jennifer Morgan could go into more detail on that. We want to enshrine this in the closing document, in the conclusions. In which form is something that Jennifer Morgan can say more on than me. We said about 2/3 in a pledge were in favor, but 1/3 is still missing, and we want to convince them and get them on board. When it comes to hydrogen, which exactly do you mean? Which fund or? I think we need to talk about this bilaterally. We have different projects that are ongoing. Yes, on the decision, we are looking for a decision on GST, where part of the mitigation text mentions this tripling of capacities by 2030. The Paris Agreement is a hybrid agreement, so it will be a collective goal, and every country will say what they are going to do to reach that goal. But the symbol, the message is so important. Because if 197 states say, we want this, this is our goal, combined with the phase out, this would be a very clear message to banks, financing institutions, and they know where to invest their money. Swiss Radio, Klaus Ammann. That's the biggest COP of all times, double as many participants as last year. Business representatives, and thanks to the transparency system, we see that there are many representatives, not only from the oil industry. Is this helpful for climate protection, what we're doing here, and where are things headed? Well, we could see that the Paris Agreement was truly able to deliver for climate protection. Before Paris, the world was on track for a 4-degree temperature rise. Now it's rather in the range of 2.5 to 2.9 degrees. Of course, it's not yet 1.5 degrees, but we see how many countries have developed their national contributions, their national plans, their long-term goals. They're in the implementation stage now, and this COP and the global stocktake, which is this essential part of this COP also, is to make this COP an acceleration COP. And this can only happen if we truly act together. And if the most vulnerable country have a seat at the table, they don't at the G20, and they certainly don't at the G7. Here they do have a seat at the table, and not only that, they have a strong voice as well. And I think that this multilateral forum, especially, and think about the loss and damage fund. This was a highly complex, very political issue. This forum was able to get it done by listening to others, by understanding, by working together, joining ranks, struggling with one another. But in the end, we delivered. Of course, we're not there yet. We haven't solved everything, but this is why the COP is so important. And I already spoke about what's happening at the margins of this COP as well. And I think it's truly part of the COP to address this important issue.
About the technicalities of calling fossil fuel phase out or phase down. So Trinidad and Tobago proposed that we use the IPCC recommendations in the final text. Do you think this is a proposal that we should use to solve and call phase out or phase down?
I think the science should most definitely inform our decisions. The science, we have quite a lot of facts on the table. I think the negotiations here should be informed by that science. At the end of the day, we all as countries need to come together to get that clear signal of the phase out of fossil fuels and the phase up of renewables informed by the science. And so all of those different proposals are coming forward, and that's our job next week on the political level.
So, ich habe jetzt noch 3 Fragesteller hier gehabt und noch ein paar jetzt, die sich mehr melden. Ich würde sagen, weil wir langsam gegen dem Ende hier ankommen.
We're nearing the end of this press conference. We have 3 final questions and a final round of questions. We will conclude. It's not the last opportunity to exchange over here. Frankfurter Allgemeine, where does China stand? How important it is that the fact that we're seeing an increase of emissions, where does China stand? Does China want to participate also in the loss and damage fund? Jacqueline Adam. The last declarations and the statements of the, I couldn't hear the beginning of the first question. The non-signing of the last declaration of the High Ambition Coalition, did this weaken our negotiation position? Very brief question. Where do you get your optimism from that the loss and damage fund, that those who do not pay will pay in the end because things haven't happened so far? And when the US is contributing $7 million, doesn't it take away of the momentum in the global south? It's like $99. I give 10 cents of tip. Doesn't this result in a loss of credibility? Let me begin with China. China is one of the most important countries participating in this COP. They're represented by Minister Xie Shanhua, and I had a bilateral meeting with him yesterday. After the Sunnydale statement, US-China, they are here. They're one of the most important negotiating parties and states. I think it is important to see how China can manage economic security, but also climate security, energy security. But a major burden and major share of climate and CO2 emissions reduction has to come from China. They're well positioned with their renewable energies, but the construction of new coal-fired power plants goes in the wrong direction. Yes, we also talk about them becoming a donor for the loss and damage fund. The message has not been yet registered or heard, but it's a topic that we address not only with China, but also with other large emitting nations. And large capacities. So China is active. We are engaged in dialogue, and I expect and I hope that they will be on board next week, because the climate crisis is also happening in China. The next question: Germany is important and active member of the Hague Alliance, and I assume that Germany will be on board at the next statement. I think you need to see two things. You see the members, the heads of state and government, they arrive with many people in their delegations, whether it's here or at G20. Then the second is we're talking about the biggest transformation of the world. And of course, it affects many sectors, many groups. And those groups want to be present. They want to negotiate. They want to help find constructive solutions. And this is why I think, well, it's easy to say that a climate conference results in so much travel, but we're faced with a major challenge, and I think it's the right thing to do. On your question, we don't perceive it as you that the vulnerable countries see it as a 10% tip. We receive a lot of support. We don't expect gratitude. That's not the basis for negotiations, but we are being encouraged, and we receive good feedback telling us it was the right signal. Some have seen as a surprise moment, but others have seen it it as a shock moment, and then because they realize, well, there's finger pointing, and of course, fingers are pointed towards China and other Gulf states. Who would have thought in the run-up to this conference that we would succeed in garnering the support of a Gulf nation and resulting in a major contribution, and that was an important step. One final remark. I have good news. The federal government has adopted a climate action strategy. It was adopted by the cabinet today, and I recommend you read this. It's the comprehensive climate action strategy, the most comprehensive climate action strategy. It's a strategy by the federal government, and we're delighted that we are able to actively implement it as members and representatives of the federal government. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP28 in Dubai. Ambitious, just together.